Okay, so somebody wrote in a question, and he said, unity is an important factor in the success of any group. Unity comes from a healthy sense of pride and love for the group one is in. Given current affairs, my question is in regards to ethnic groups. How does a Buddhist who is part of an ethnic group maintain and preach unity to his ethnic group while practicing the Buddhist teachings of no self? Okay, unity is so identity driven. How does a Buddhist preach unity to a divided ethnic group like African Americans or Latinos who have self hate while still upholding the teaching of non self? Good questions, huh? Really thoughtful questions. So, we all belong to different groups, whether they're ethnic, religious, racial, socioeconomic, whatever it is. But I think what's important when whatever groups we belong to is to remember that they're merely conditioned phenomena. They don't last forever, and they come about due to causes and conditions. They don't have any inherent nature. So we may have certain identities, in quotes, conventional identities throughout our life, yeah, but these identities are not who we are. Yeah, they are just things that, yeah, we happen to be associated with for whatever period of time. They are not us. Okay, so there's different ways of seeing identities. One way is, as I'm suggesting, they're just conditioned phenomena that we belong to temporarily that are not us. They're based on conventions. They're useful conventions most of the time. I know that I belong to the group called women, so that's very helpful to know what bathroom to go to. Yeah. I don't need to make a huge identity out of it. Yeah. Same way, I have the identity of an American. That lets me know when I arrive in the country which line to go to. But I don't make a big deal out of it. It's not a strong identity. Yeah. So we may have, we can either choose to make our identities very strong. I could become a rah American, America first, America best, everything American, I could become, in relationship to my identity as a woman, take on an identity of, the whole system is pitted against me. I know already before I begin that they'd rather give the job to a man, and even if I get it, they're going to pay a man more than they pay me. And when we go to board meetings, they're going to cut me off, and I'm not going to have my voice heard, and I could make a whole identity out of that. Okay, I came from a Jewish background. Oh my goodness, talk about identities. Yeah, I went to Israel and I wrote an article afterward called In the Land of Identities. Yeah. And so there you grow up with, we've existed 4,000 years and they've been trying to kill us off and exterminate us and they haven't succeeded yet. And, we're the chosen people, and all this kind of stuff. And, I just said, okay, I come from that ethnic group. I like vegetarian chicken soup. I know how to swear in Yiddish, but I am not developing an identity based on persecution because I don't want to live my life with an identity based on persecution and victimhood. Yeah. So, and many of, everybody here has different identities. So we can either treat them as lightly as conventions that are useful, or we can make hard and fast identities about them. And the thing is, when we make hard and fast identities, we generally tend to make ourselves into a victim nowadays. Okay? So women are victims, Latinos are victims, African Americans are victims, and now you have white Protestant men who are victims and that's one of the bases of the white supremacist movement. They're taking our country away from us. Yeah. So, you can build so many identities, and nowadays, so many of these identities are based on being victims, And I remember last year around Halloween time, so many people got very upset because different people who didn't belong to a certain ethnic group dressed up at Halloween as members of that ethnic group. And some people got so offended by that. Or other people, when somebody who's not in their ethnic group cooks the food from their ethnic group, they say this is cultural appropriation and you shouldn't do it. And so everything becomes so, this is my identity, and therefore you should treat me 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't treat me like that, so I am upset and angry and upset and offended and insulted, and therefore I have a right to blah, 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 and you should not blah, 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 and my goodness, it's exhausting. Totally exhausting. So in response to this person who's asking a really good question, I think, we can look at the identities that we have and the groups that we belong to and see the good qualities, some of the good qualities of the groups, knowing that those good qualities don't necessarily apply to everybody in the group. Yeah, but also to realize some of the bad qualities of the groups that we belong to. And again, the bad qualities don't apply to everybody, but they certainly, are. So it's very interesting coming from a Jewish background. You grow up with certain things about, the Jews are intelligent, we value education, and you should marry a Jewish man. They're much better husbands. This was before Weiner, and what was the other one? Yeah. No, the one in New York. Anyway, yeah, so it was before them, but you marry a Jewish man, they're better husbands, and they're intelligent, da 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 da. But the Jews had a very nice thing. They talked about all their faults too, and they made fun of each other. Yeah, if you watch Fiddler on the Roof, it's like people are really making fun of Jewish culture. And the Jews allow themselves to make fun of their own culture. But God forbid anybody else make fun of their culture. And that doesn't work. Okay? Because of this attachment and making an identity. But what I'm trying to say is, if you belong to a group, have a positive identity, be aware of the faults. Yeah, but don't make everything so heavy. Yeah, and so confining. Yeah, because when the identities become very strong and confining like that, then, like I said, we tend to make ourselves into victims. And we also tend to compare ourselves with others. And of course, when we compare ourselves with others, we always come out less than. But occasionally we come out better than. But then it keeps devolving into this whole thing of, well, my group is better than their group because we do blah, 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 but they don't appreciate us, or my group is less than because na, 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 and, those people treat us inappropriately. So, you know, I think I got my point across. Yeah. I mean, they're just conventions. They're not who we are. We don't need to make such a big deal about them. Yeah. And what I think, if you want to have pride in a group identity, then, be proud of being a sentient being. Yeah. Don't even be proud of a human being, because sometimes as human beings, if we're proud, I'm a human being, we have better intelligence than everybody else, all the other animals and insects, then that gives us permission to not treat them well and to dominate nature and to make it conform with what we want, which is not at all helpful. Yeah. So if you really want an identity, be very inclusive. Yeah, we are all sentient beings. We are all sentient beings. We all want happiness. None of us want suffering. Yeah, so therefore, if it's suffering, it should be eliminated. It doesn't matter whose it is. If it's happiness, it should be gained. It doesn't matter whose it is. And if you develop that kind of identity and you see the good qualities of sentient beings, they've been kind to us, are kind to us, will be kind to us. Yeah, you balance it out by seeing the bad qualities of sentient beings. They're under the influence of afflictions and karma. Then you have a more reasonable take on different living beings and, on living beings and how to approach them and how to respond without the mind getting so tangled up in jealousy, competition, comparison, victimhood, arrogance, all this kind of stuff.
So also, Venerable, as Buddhists, we have an opportunity to use our identity for to benefit others. Especially if we have an identity or belong to a group that does not commonly identify with Buddhism, because then we have the opportunity to share with them the Dharma. By the fact that they identify with who we are, they can relate to us, whether it is because we speak the same language, because we have the same skin color, because we have the same gender. And these are affinities that draw people to us. And as Buddhists, that gives us then an opportunity to share with them and to relate with them from a Buddhist perspective, which is very beneficial.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And there, we do have certain identities that are conventional ones, and we can use them as you suggested, to make a connection with other people in order to introduce Buddhism to them. Yeah, very true. But again, we're not holding that identity. I'm only going to teach Latinos because they're my group, Huh? Or I'm only going to, I'm only going to teach women, or I'm only going to teach female Latinas, But that's true. You can use it too.
Quarter greetings, Venerable. Yes, thank you for sharing. I think a lot of the confusion too in regards to the ethnicity and it's due to geography too. For example, here in the United States, African is considered black, and Asian is considered Chinese, and Latino is considered from like South America. But if you look at these terms, there's a lot of diversity. Like, for example, Asia is very diverse. Indians are Asian too. Middle Easterners, Jewish people are technically Asian from West Asia. Same with the term Latino. French, Romanians, Italians, Spanish, Portuguese. These are all Latin countries too. And then Africa's very diverse. You have many tribes there, indigenous, which don't identify as black or white. They identify as red people. just like Native Americans. I actually descend from one of those tribes too, one of the indigenous peoples. They mostly inhabit the Saharan desert, and they're a matriarchal culture based on female descent, and the men veil themselves, not the women. The men veil themselves. So it's a very unique desert culture, indigenous, just like Native Americans. They're also Native Africans, and even as much too. And the term Caucasian, here in the United States, the term Caucasian is used to mean white, but actually the original Caucasian people are in the Caucasus Mountains, such as Chechens. And what's funny is in Russia, the Caucasian people, the actual Caucasian people, are called black. So the real Caucasians are people from the Caucasus Mountains, like Chechens, Georgians, and the such. So I think in the US we have a lot of confusion with geography. I mean, a lot of people don't know the meaning behind this. Where the original Caucasus, the original Africa was in North Africa, in Tunisia, Libya, Morocco. That was called Africa. Same with the original Asia was in modern day Turkey and the Middle East. So people get confused with these terms. And I think this what leads to a lot of that. And as you said about the victim mentality too, yes, as a quote-unquote minority and mixed ethnicity, I experienced that. And many others have experienced that too. But as you said, we cannot be victims. We have to rise up out of that. And being here at Sravasti Abbey, many different ethnic groups. And I just see fellow Buddhists, I see their culture, but I don't feel like, there's many Western people. I don't feel like this is just Western. I just feel another Buddhist that I'm sharing Dharma with, So thank you for sharing.